They were not born Christian, they were born under thunder gods, under fire, under blood-soaked banners. For nearly 3 centuries, the name Viking meant only one thing to Europe: fear. From the coasts of England to the monasteries of France, from the rivers of Russia to the gates of the Mediterranean. Their ships arrived without warning. Their axes spoke before their words. But behind the raids, behind the terror, something was changing. Because every monastery they burned, every priest they captured, every city they looted, brought them closer to a faith they once despised. This is the story of how the most feared pagans in Europe became Christians, and how the Viking Age ended, not in battle, but at the altar. Historians define the Viking Age as the period between the late 8th century and the mid-11th century. During these years, Scandinavian warriors raided, traded, and settled across vast parts of Europe. They struck England. They burned monasteries in Francia. They sailed into the heart of Eastern Europe. Yet this chaos produced an unexpected result. For the first time, Vikings came into constant contact with Christian civilization, and slowly, that contact changed them. By the 12th century, almost all of Scandinavia had abandoned paganism. The same men who once plundered churches would soon kneel inside them. But before we can understand how that happened, we must return to their old world. Before the cross, there were many gods: Odin, Thor, Frey, Loki. They ruled a violent cosmos where courage was sacred and death was not feared, but honored. There were no priests, no holy scriptures, no centralized church. Worship was personal. Rituals were performed through sacrifice, to the gods and to the spirits of the ancestors. It was a religion of action, not confession, of blood, not forgiveness. Compared to Christianity, this belief system could not have been more different. And yet, trade would become the first bridge between these two worlds. Long before the Viking Age began, Scandinavian merchants were already trading with Christian Europe. Through this commerce, the Vikings learned about Christ. But the relationship was uneasy. Many Christian communities refused to trade with pagans. Wealth declined. Farmland was poor. Resources were scarce. For many in Scandinavia, raiding became survival. And with that decision, the Viking Age was born. The year was 793 AD. On the coast of England, the monks of Lindisfarne Abbey were preparing for worship. They never saw the ships coming. The Vikings slaughtered the clergy, seized their treasures, and carried off prisoners as slaves. Europe was horrified. But for the Vikings, this raid revealed something crucial. Christian monasteries were rich and unprotected, because Christians did not expect war inside their sacred walls. And so the raids multiplied. But every raid also meant something else. Every captured priest, every burned chapel, was another step toward the religion they would one day adopt. In the south, the Danes came into contact with Christian Germanic tribes. These lands had already been converted under Charlemagne. Still, the influence remained weak, until a political crisis changed everything. In 812, the Danish king Hemming died. Civil war followed. One noble, Harald Klak, sought help from the Frankish emperor Louis the Pious. Louis agreed. Harald regained the throne. And in 819, he was baptized, along with his family. Many Viking nobles followed his example. For the first time, Christian missionaries were officially allowed to operate in Denmark. But the true missionary had not yet arrived. In 831, a monk named Ansgar was appointed Archbishop of Hamburg. His mission: convert the north. He traveled to Birka in Sweden. There, he established a small Christian community. But in 845, Vikings destroyed Hamburg. Ansgar fled south to Bremen. He would never see a fully Christian Scandinavia, but the seed had been planted. Christianity did not spread through Scandinavia only by belief. It spread through war, treaties, and kings. Because for Viking rulers, religion was no longer just spiritual. It had become political currency. By the late 9th century, many Viking leaders had learned something dangerous. You could gain land, legitimacy, and powerful allies by accepting Christ, and sometimes you could avoid destruction. In 878 AD, the Danish warlord Guthrum was defeated by King Alfred of Wessex at the Battle of Edington. Guthrum faced annihilation. Instead, Alfred offered a treaty, the Treaty of Wedmore. Guthrum would be baptized, he would accept Christianity, and in return, he would rule East Anglia. Guthrum became Aethelstan, and he ruled as a Christian until his death in 890. It was not faith, it was strategy. This pattern repeated across Europe. The Viking leader Rollo made a similar agreement with the Frankish king Charles the Simple. Rollo accepted baptism. In return, he was granted land in northern France. That land became Normandy, from raiders to rulers. In Denmark, the most important conversion came from Harald Bluetooth, the first king to unite all of Denmark. But his conversion is told in 3 different ways. One account says a priest named Poppo held red-hot iron without burning his hand. Harald, shocked, converted. Another says he was defeated by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto I and accepted Christianity afterward. A third claims he was forced under pressure from Emperor Otto II. But all historians agree on one thing. Harald's conversion was political. And after him, Christianity spread across Denmark, then Norway and Sweden. The most brutal conversion came from Olaf Tryggvason. Converted in 994 while raiding England, Olaf returned to Norway as a Christian king. He demanded conversion. Those who refused were tortured, exiled, executed. Pagan temples were destroyed. Churches were built in their place. In Norway, Christianity came by the sword. Olaf wanted Iceland to convert as well. By the year 1000, the old gods were losing ground, but they would not disappear quietly. Across the north, conversion created fear, rebellion, and a strange new reality, 2 religions existing inside the same people. King Olaf Tryggvason did not rely on persuasion. When missionaries failed in Iceland, he turned to coercion. He captured Icelanders living in Norway. He cut off Iceland's trade. He threatened families, and Iceland had no choice. Dependent on Norway, and with loved ones held hostage, the Icelandic leaders gathered. They decided Iceland would become Christian. But privately, many still worshipped the old gods. Greenland was different. Here, conversion came without blood. Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, visited Norway around the year 1000. He met King Olaf. He was baptized. Then he returned to Greenland with a priest. And slowly, Christianity spread. Not by force, but by example. Sweden resisted longer than any other kingdom. Missionaries arrived as early as the 9th century, but failed to create permanent change. Then came Olaf Skotkonung. He was baptized by a bishop sent from Hamburg. Unlike Olaf of Norway, he did not rule by terror, but his authority changed everything. What the king accepted, the nobles followed, and what the nobles followed, the people accepted. True Christian dominance came under Canute the Great, grandson of Harald Bluetooth. By the early 11th century, Canute ruled England, Denmark, Norway, parts of Sweden. He built churches, funded missions, strengthened Christian law. And unlike Olaf, he used peace, not terror. Under Canute, Scandinavia became Christian. Viking conversion did not start with the people. It started with the kings. Once a ruler converted, his nobles followed, then their followers. Religion moved from the throne to the fields. For decades, old gods and Christ coexisted. People baptized their children, then sacrificed to Thor. They prayed in church, then whispered to Odin. This was syncretism, a world between faiths. In Sweden, King Inge tried to ban pagan sacrifices. The people rebelled, he was forced to flee. But time was against the old gods. By the 12th century, Christianity dominated Scandinavia. The Viking Age ended, not with fire, but with faith. Across Scandinavia, the old shrines stood abandoned. The gods of thunder and war, Odin, Thor, Frey, had faded into memory. And in their place stood churches. But this was not just a religious shift. It was the end of a world. Viking communities abroad, in France, Britain, Russia, also converted, not by conquest, not by fear, but by culture, politics, and survival. The world was changing, and to remain powerful, the North had to change with it. Once raiders, now kings. Once feared, now crowned. Christian Scandinavia entered Europe as part of its political world. Trade replaced raids, law replaced vengeance, crowns replaced war banners. The old faith was tied to clans, war, and bloodlines. Christianity offered something different: unity across borders, power through diplomacy, a future inside Europe. The Vikings did not abandon their gods because they were weak. They abandoned them because the world demanded it. Yet the old gods never truly vanished. They live in stories, in language, in myth, in the names of days, in the sagas, and in the idea that once the North belonged to warriors who feared no storm. The Viking Age did not end in battle, it ended in baptism, and with it, a civilization crossed the line from myth into history. If you want the next chapter, subscribe, because history never truly ends.